So in talking about the love of the absolute, the manifest absolute, and contacting, experiencing that, one of the qualities is purity. And we have a lot of opinions about purity based on our culture and society. And for a lot of societies, something like purity means a removing of something that's not pure. Whenever I think of this topic, I often think about the various laundry products that we have. We're taking stains out, removing bad things out of our clothes so they look good. And so we approach the absolute and the topic of purity in a similar way. We view it that there's stuff in here that I'd like to get rid of, I'd like to have excised in some fashion, and then maybe purity can do that. But the purity is different than that. It's a purity that has a kind of freshness and innocence to it. It's not something that is eliminating anything. It does it by conversion. About 30 years ago, one of the fellow students I was in a Sangha with was a woman from, I think, from Germany. And she and I ended up sitting together at some event, some teachers talk, and on the break we were talking, and she had finished her dissertation, gotten her PhD, and I was really curious. I'm not well schooled in math, so I thought I wouldn't understand, but I asked her, "What's your dissertation on?" And she said, "Zero." And of course, that caught my attention because I think, well, how long does it take to write about zero? You know? I mean, how do you write a dissertation on zero? So I asked her, I said, well, how do you do that? And she said, well, there's a number of ways to arrive at zero. We can do it by multiplication, subtraction, division, addition, all these different ways. And she said, the only pure zero is adding like 2 and -2 to create zero. She said, that's the only pure zero. The other ones, there's some manipulation of the number. And with that kind of equation, it's just a meeting and sort of a dropping. And she was a Zen practitioner, so I think she had little view in there. But I think of purity in the same way, that and she told me that zero is not a number, which I can't remember why it's not a number to tell you, but I thought that was an interesting comment too. So purity is like that. It's not a removing of something. It's independent. It has its own integrity, its own functioning, and it really does it based on merger, based on union. So the purity, when it meets whatever we perceive to be impure or stained in us, a problem, it meets it, and it meets it in a way that's very harmonious. So it's not coming in with that samurai sword, cutting and removing. It's coming in, and it's basically comes in and becomes the host vehicle. It takes over the other just by its presence. Because anytime you have anything that's unconditioned, anything of the absolute, meeting something that's conditioned, something in the world or something in our structure, the unconditioned is always going to win, because it doesn't go through a decay and death, where whatever's conditioned, we know we can't sustain anything as humans. We try to, you have a fight with your spouse or your partner, I'm really going to stay mad. I mean, I'm really going to stay mad at them. And after a while, you really got to work at it. You got to remind yourself and fan the flames and get all worked up again. Yeah, I'm right and they're wrong, and all that. But it's like that. We can't sustain it. The condition can't be sustained. And so as we contact purity, it's a matter of opening, allowing. There's really a kind of a gentleness to it, where, again, we're not doing anything drastic. We're letting the nature of the absolute take its course and meet and convert whatever it is that we're wishing was more purified. So I say that because, as we do these guided meditations, we'll come in contact with the purity, and just to have that understanding, it's sort of like getting close to it, being with it, There was a famous story in Japan of this family, and they had one of their kids was really getting in trouble all the time, for Japanese society. They were getting arrested and all these things. It was horrifying to the family. And they had some distant relative who was a Zen teacher. So they invited the teacher to come stay with them for a weekend, and they put the problem child and the teacher in the same bedroom. They shared a room. And at the end of the weekend, the kid had really done a 180, had decided, I'm not going to do this anymore. It's not who I am, or, whatever their rationale. And the parents went to the teacher and were like, oh, thank God, you talked to them, you straightened them out. The teacher said, I didn't say a word. We didn't talk about that at all. They were like, what? They said, yeah, we just hung out and I showed them how to meditate, and we meditated together a couple times. That was it. But it was enough for the kid to have a connection where they were acting out of all the teenage reasons kids do. But once they felt some sense of connection, they didn't need to act out anymore. They didn't need to call attention. They could just blend in. So it's kind of what we're doing is, we're coming close to the absolute, we're opening, and we have to be willing to let ourselves be affected. It isn't that, and we can't even choose. So there's an openness, a receptivity, and a welcoming that we need to bring when we contact the absolute, and understand there's a wisdom that's outside our view. So again, coming into retreat, everybody has expectations. Some of them are met, some are not. But it happens in a wisdom. I mean, I've been doing this a long time, and I see for myself and others that we really do get what we need, what we're ready for, what we can integrate and live from. If somebody has too big of an experience, it's really hard to integrate and function from that. So, doing it in these steps is really, really helpful. It lets us do it in a way that's very natural and not too jarring to our system.